Black Star Network is here.
Hold no punches.
I'm real revolutionary right now. Black power.
Support this man, Black media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
I'm Brittany Noble, sitting in for Roland tonight, and here's what's coming up on Roland Martin Unfiltered, streaming live on the Black Star Network. A mother from North Carolina is suing a hospital for negligence as well as emotional and financial distress after serious mistakes made her question whether the child she buried was actually hers. She'll be here to share her story live. Former NFL head coach Brian Flores, Steve Wilks, and Ray Horton just won a major ruling. Their discrimination lawsuit against the league will be heard in open court. Thousands of new mothers are being reported to the police due to flawed drug tests at childbirth. Some have been arrested while others are separated from their children. We'll speak with reporters from the Marshall Project about these alarming findings. And tempers flared at Thursday's Senate confirmation and Homeland Security Committee hearing. There was a heated exchange between Republican Senator Josh Hawley, Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison, and Senator Cory Booker, who called out racist Trump nominee Jeremy Carl for reducing him to the color of his skin. North Carolina marchers have reached the capital city after walking for 3 days now. We'll share highlights from today's Wilson to Raleigh Moral March. It's time to bring the funk on Roland Martin Unfiltered, streaming live on the Black Star Network. Let's go.
He's got it. Whatever the miss, he's on it. Whatever it is, he's got the scoop, the fact, the find. And when it breaks, he's right on time and it's rolling. Best believe he's knowing. Putting it down from sports to news to politics. With entertainment just for kicks, he's rolling. It's on go, roll, y'all. It's Roland Martin, rolling with Roland now. He's funky, he's fresh, he's real, the best, you know he's Roland Martin now.
A mother from North Carolina is sharing a heartbreaking experience she endured at a Charlotte hospital where she was told that her newborn baby had died. However, days later, LaShonda Hunter was informed that her baby was alive and improving, only to be told again that it was all a mistake. LaShonda's daughter, Legacy, was born February of 2022 and was quickly admitted to Novant Health Presbyterian Medical Center due to breathing problems, jaundice, and an elevated white blood cell count. Despite these serious concerns, Hunter says that doctors initially reassured her that Legacy was responding well to treatment. Then she received the devastating news that her baby had died. LaShonda and civil rights activist John Barnett are here, both to discuss this lawsuit that they have filed regarding this ordeal. LaShonda, thank you for joining us. I cannot imagine how you are feeling right now, but we appreciate you for sharing your story.
Thank you for having me.
What made you decide to speak publicly about what had happened to you and your daughter?
Today makes 4 years that my daughter was born. Today is actually her birthday. And over the 4 years, the hospital has made me feel silent. I have reached out. I have asked for investigations. I have asked for proof. I have asked for all kinds of things, and they have ignored me numerous times. And I just felt like they were trying to silence me, and it was no or never.
So walk us through that moment when doctors told you that your baby had died.
I was in the hospital. I just had her. They told me the first 72 hours were critical. She breezed through the 72 hours, doing amazing. On day 4, I was released from the hospital. I went down to the NICU. They told me they thought she had developed a infection. I told them to do everything they could, discuss the plan of treatment. I went home. On day 5, they called me and said, hey, we don't think she's going to make it through the night. I told them that she was. I'm God-fearing, and that she's going to be fine. Do everything you're supposed to do. I was stalking my chart to make sure that everything was done correctly. The next day, she made it through. She was fine. I got a text from a nurse the next morning, and they said, I just laid eyes on Legacy. She's looks amazing. The same time, the next night, they called me again and said that Legacy would not make it through the night. And I said, y'all can't keep calling me, telling me this. Like, she's going to be fine. About 5-10 minutes later, they called me back and said she had passed. I didn't understand it. I couldn't grasp what they were saying. I was just in shock. So I immediately grabbed my phone to see if she was due for blood treatment, and to see if they did the blood and given her antibiotics. By the time I got to the phone, within minutes, they had wiped her completely from my chart. Picture gone, file gone, everything.
And so then you were later told that your daughter was actually alive and improving?
Yes. The next day I went to the hospital to see the baby that they said was my daughter's. And they put me in a closet, a dark closet with some family members and friends. And we didn't know who the baby was. We didn't know what the baby looked like. It was completely dark in there. It was only a slight light from the hallway shining in. So I went home and prepared for the funeral, because I entrusted the hospital thinking they were truthful. On 3 days later, I get a phone call from a doctor that was treating my daughter that I had spoke to several times, Dr. K. And he called me. He was so excited. He said, Miss Hunter, I'm calling you. This is Dr. K. I'm calling you to give you an update on Legacy. And I said, okay. And he said, she's doing amazing. He said that her jaundice was looking better. They were going to take her off of that light and put her on another light. Her white blood cells was looking better, which means the antibiotic was working, and that her breathing was doing better, and they were going to switch the tubes out. I just was in shock. And my assistant said, I thought that you said her baby was dead. And he says, is this Miss Hunter? And I said, yes. And then he just hung the phone up.
So then to be told again that this was a mistake, what kind of emotional damage does that do to you, Mom?
So I called numerous times after he hung up. I mean, numerous times. And for hours, they would put me on hold and hang up. They would say, hold on and hang up. And the NICU is a direct number. It's not like go through the hospital and be transferred here and there. They were putting me on hold and hanging up and would not answer the phones. Hours and hours and hours later, the doctor that pronounced my child deceased that night called me and said that she had made a mistake by calling me. And I said, you didn't call me, Dr. K did. She said, no, it was me. I said, no, it wasn't. I know who I spoke with. And she said, well, your name was on another chart, and we made a mistake. And I said, well, I want to see the baby that you're talking about then. If you made a mistake, I want to see that baby. She said, if you come to the hospital, I'll call security and have you arrested.
John, let's bring you into the conversation. You're a civil rights activist. When you first heard LaShonda's story, what made you feel like this was not just medical negligence, but a civil rights issue?
Well, the first thing I thought it was bizarre. And I had to, really ask for a lot of information. Some of that information she shared with me was, and I don't know if she told you, Miss LaShonda said she didn't think she could have children. This was her, she called the baby's called Legacy. But she didn't think she could have babies. She found out she was pregnant on a whim. And when she found out, she was extremely excited. So there's about 7 red flags. I only give you 3. Number 1, when we found out the civil rights violations, when she showed me the picture of the baby, because the baby is a baby. I don't even think it's a black baby, but the baby has genitals. And Miss Hunter has a whole history of ultrasounds of a female baby, a little baby girl. She has everything. She has all the information. And it's a girl. It was a girl. So to have a baby being taken to the funeral home and they say, hey, this is a little boy. It was not only troubling, it just made me think about something in like the 1800s. And I think the most shocking thing is that the lawyer that took this case, and we got to give her a shout out, the lawyer that took this is white female. She doesn't even do civil cases like this. I think she's in the finances. She knew that something was wrong, and she took it upon herself to file a civil case with this particular case. And what's interesting is that Miss Hunter was running out of time. And I was telling Miss Hunter about biblical stories where people are trapped, like Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego. At the last minute, they were saved. And we only had like less than 6 days to get a new lawyer in place. Shout out to my personal attorney, Miss Pamela Hunter. She was able to accept this case. And on the day of our press conference about 2 weeks ago, 1 hour before the press conference, we were able to refile this lawsuit. And so now this is the kicker. This is the third bullet. Adrian Health has not responded. They just sent this message out, very vague, like we take care of our patients. That was it. No details, no information, just a very blank statement. And my attorney, Hunter, had said, John, you need to call your friend, Attorney Ben Crump, because hospitals have deep pockets. I want to make sure I let this be known on your show. They have deep pockets, and they ignore demand letters from lawyers, and sometimes they ignore lawsuits. She said, this is a case for Attorney Ben Crump, but I'm going to do the best I can. And so knowing that they left that message or sent that message out to the media, it's almost like, we don't care. And all we're asking is to be transparent. Where's this baby at? Where did the baby come from? And in closing, I'll say this. Miss Hunter was hesitant to bury the baby boy, because she don't know who baby it is. So it took about a month to bury the baby. So we're going to continue through the efforts of Mr. Roland Martin. He's helped me so many times, and I got to give him 3 seconds. He's helped me with Shankrella Robinson case. Last month, he supported me with the Amazon shooting case. That guy now is in jail for attempted murder, thanks to your show. And so I hate to tell Mr. Martin, I hate to get all these cases and bring them to his office, but they just happen to be in the Charlotte area. The Amazon shooting case is near Charlotte. Shankrella Robinson, may she rest in peace. And now this case. And I'm like, I don't want to bother Roland Martin's show again. But this case, she's gone viral on TikTok and other areas. Attorney Ben Crump has shared it on his page. But we have to break the backs of these hospitals, because she does not know where her baby is. And this is we're doing an interview on a day she should be mourning and having reflections. This is her birthday. So this is her birthday gift, being on your show today. And hopefully we get some justice. We have filed in civil court, and we're looking forward to our day in court. And we're going to continue to expose Novant for what they've been doing.
Let's bring in our panel for tonight. We have Michael Imhotep, a host for the African History Network show in Detroit. Candace Kelly, a legal analyst and host, Not All Hood in South Orange, New Jersey. And Matt Manning, a civil rights attorney from Corpus Christi, Texas. I want to thank you all for being here. Michael, we'll start with you. What are your thoughts about this case? Do you have any questions?
Yeah, a couple questions. First, my heart goes out to LaShonda and your family, because I know what it's like to have a baby to die in the hospital, because that happened to me and my former fiance back in 2013. So my heart goes out to you. So first question I have, LaShonda, because I know it was devastating for both of us. First question to you is, how are you doing now?
I don't really know how to answer that question, because my baby is not home. And until she gets home, I don't think I'll ever be 100%. I too buried a child in 99. So I know what it is to feel the loss of a baby, to be in a hospital and leave out the hospital without your child after giving birth. I know what it's like to have a funeral service and bury I went through that whole process. I know the feeling you
So
have.
did we. Yes.
I have never gotten that feeling with Legacy. When I say never got that feeling with Legacy from day one. I never felt like she was gone.
And to the attorney that's on, I appreciate you all being on. It's about, most time I ask people for smoking guns rather, to give to the attorney that I work with nationally.
Right.
She got about 9. I mean, let me give you one for free. She did a DNA on the baby that she buried, and it was inconclusive. Jesus. She did the nails and the skin. She did the nails and the skin, and it came back inconclusive.
Right. And just a quick follow-up question, if I could. LaShonda, so my former fiance, ex-fiance, she had to go through therapy because of what happened. I probably should have gone through therapy, but I didn't. So I'm just asking you, have you been through any type of therapy to try to deal with what happened to you?
I have. The first year and probably 3 months, I denied therapy. I denied it because I was fighting a war by myself. I felt like I knew what I was talking about, but I just didn't know how to convey it. And they were holding my daughter's records. I didn't have her records for a year and 3 months.
Wow.
So I didn't get her records until May of the following year. So once I got the records and saw it in black and white and saw that she was still being treated after her day of death, way after her day of death, then I knew it was like a relief. So then I accepted therapy because I had to learn how to deal with knowing that my child was out here.
Right. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Candace Kelly, an attorney, what's coming up for you?
So, first of all, I am glad that you continue to contact the show, the Roland Martin Show, because this is how you get your voice out there and the help that you have received so far. So thank you for that. And also just my condolences to you in terms of this whole process and where you are now. You still feel like Legacy could potentially still be alive. I know that there was a question in and around the DNA, which you partly answered, but I'm wondering, what DNA did they compare samples wise? Did they get DNA that was authorized from you, or did they pull that from something that was already on record? How did that DNA comparison even happen?
So once we realized that the baby that was at the funeral home was a boy, my attorney at the time contacted the hospital and said, "Hey, you guys got to do an investigation. Something is going on. This is a boy." And they ignored me. So I said, "Well, what do I do?" And she said, "Well, the only other thing that I can think of is if we take a DNA test." So I paid out of my pocket for a private DNA testing. And first they wanted the funeral home to do pick up the DNA testing, and the funeral home declined. And my attorney at the time also said she didn't want to do it because she didn't want the chain to be messed up, and they said something else happened. So they actually came out, they swabbed me, and they received DNA from the baby that was at the funeral home, and it came back inconclusive.
And was there a second test at all? Because, different reports, as we know online, have said different things.
Yes, there was a second test, but the thing about that is I never took another DNA. They never grabbed any more DNA from the baby. I didn't sign for anybody to do another DNA test. So I don't know where that DNA came from. I don't know where the test came from. I just received DNA test saying, "Hey, it's a 99.9% is your baby." And I never took another DNA. I never signed for another DNA. And if you've used the same DNA, if it came back inconclusive the first time, how could it possibly come back positive the second time?
And
thank you for clearing that up.
And I also want to add now, I talked about those 8 to 9 smoking guns. This is number 4, number 5. He does the DNA test, comes back inconclusive. The lawyer tells the hospital, "Hey, my client is doing a DNA test, so y'all be on standby." They initiate some actions themselves, and that DNA report comes back without her knowing it for the most part. This is the tricky thing. DNA, every time they do a DNA testing, there's a different filing number. The second autopsy, second test, DNA test, was the same number. They just changed inconclusive to positive match without her consent. So it gets better. So Miss Hunter calls the DNA office, say, hey, do y'all supposed to have the same reference number on here? Same medical filing number? They said, the lady says, no. Every test has a different number, even if they do multiple tests.
Wow.
And I haven't given you the other 4 bullets. It gets better. It gets worse, rather. Very interesting. It's one of my most bizarre cases. And I've been doing civil rights 17 years. It's bizarre. I am so on edge, waking up at night trying to figure out how are they going to respond to this in court.
Right.
So when you give condolences, I heard you earlier, I appreciate that. I had to be mindful when I first sat down with Miss Hunter. I can't say, rest in peace to your baby, because somebody might be walking around with the baby at a grocery store. Whole Foods. So it's challenging. And what I was thinking, I was just thinking and pondering, maybe if they told the truth, then they got to go get the baby from the other person, and maybe they're going to have a double lawsuit. I don't know what they're thinking. They haven't met with us. I put a request in. Ms. Hunter put a request in. The lawyer that had her case first, she's sick. So she couldn't do anymore. And so they didn't respond to the lawyer's letters, didn't respond to the demand letters. And number 6, smoking gun. There was some documentation that this lawyer, she has a white female lawyer at first. And the second lawyer is a black female lawyer, my lovely friend, Miss Attorney Pamela Hunter. This is the kicker, y'all. In some notes that the lawyer gave us, and Miss Hunter has it, it says she has a white female attorney and she's an uneducated black woman. Uneducated black female, and she has a white attorney. Miss Hunter has a BS degree. She's far from being uneducated. And these are notes that we have that I'm going to be using at our next press conference. Unbelievable. Uneducated black woman. That's when I got mad and took the case. And her bishop, Kevin Long, shout out to Bishop Kevin Long, he's the one that said, call John Burnett. But that's what really got me when they said uneducated black woman. That got me. I don't even want to say how mad I was. That's when I just went all out. We did a press conference 2 weeks ago in front of the hospital. And my mentor, Reverend Sharpton, said, do the press conference where the pain is. And they've yet to respond. We were out there with all the stations. We was out there with all the stations in Charlotte. They've yet to respond. We was on their front door in front of Novant. And nobody came outside, no security, nobody from personnel, nobody from patients' rights, nobody. They are literally have been put on blast, and I'm going to continue to do that. I'm relentless in reference to the work we do. And we definitely going to get some answers.
Matt, do you have a question?
Yeah, I do. Let me first also offer my condolences and ask a question where I may have missed something. So I know you said you had your daughter's records. What do the records show about the continuing treatment? And I ask that because I do this work. I work in a personal injury firm, right? So the first question I had was obviously negligent infliction of emotional distress, all the things related to the mishandling of the records, and then the survival claim, which basically means if you have a family member that passes, you can continue on the personal injury claim that they would have had. So I'm particularly interested in the medical malpractice angle. What have the records shown, and what have you learned about the treatment she got after the point you were notified that she'd passed? Because that to me seems to be pretty seminal to the case.
Well, she was continuing. They in her files, they showed that on February 25th, they flushed her IV and took it out, discontinued it. And that particular IV was for her antibiotics. It shows what it was used for, what the size of it was, how it was placed, and everything. It was placed on the 15th and it was taken out on the 25th, which coincides with what the doctor said when he told me that her antibiotics were working. that it looks her red blood cells was going, her white blood cells were going back up. So that coincides with what the doctor was saying. They also changed her ETT tube. I keep saying tube, but it's ETT on the 25th of February that was placed on the 13th, the day that she was actually born. They took that out. So they were still doing things to her per her records on the 25th of February. Now, what the odd thing about that is I went up to the hospital on the 25th of February, not even knowing this. And I asked for the records for my daughter and myself. And they said, the lady told me, she said, I can give you your records, but your chart, somebody's in her chart and I'm blocked from it.
That's right.
So technically I looked it up by law. After a patient is deceased, they have so many hours, and it's less than 24 hours, but so many hours to finish the chart, and then it's closed. But this is days later. The 19th and the 25th is days later.
Yeah. Yeah. And, the medical records surely are going to show who not only had access to them, but who may have manipulated them, which I'm sure your lawyer is already looking at. I have a case currently right now where I have an entry where a nurse declined to give a person some insulin and they died. So the point is, those records are going to be very telling. And I have no doubt that when you're in front of 12 people, they will see the enormity of this mess up by the hospital, this tragedy, and will do the right thing for you. But I think that's going to be a big element of it is the medical malpractice part, because they're not going to be able to account, or they at least have not accounted yet for what they were doing all this time after they told you that she was deceased. And I think a jury is going to be very interested in that and is going to be very angry at the hospital for what they find there, because that's likely where there's malfeasance, among other places, obviously. So I'm sorry for your loss, and I'm sorry that you're in this position.
Thank you. The records speak volumes. I definitely agree with you on that. They're still not the complete records. The records are supposed to have the temperatures taken and, all the everything, any and everything. If a phone call was made, this, that, and the third, and none of that is put in the records that I have. So some of the records are still missing, but I have a majority of them, enough to say that my daughter was still living. And I also agree with you that some things that are in black and white you can't deny, but the hospital just wants me to go away, and I'm not.
That's right.
Can I say one more thing, Brittany? I'm sorry.
Yes.
I was just going to ask. Hopefully, in Discovery, you'll find be able to cross-reference any potential adoptions. I think John was alluding to that, but there's also a lot of times stuff that happens with forced adoptions or that kind of thing. So it would be very important to know whether, to his point, somebody's walking around with your baby at a grocery store, because if the hospital mismanaged that, that's going to be incredibly important to know.
I've told John personally, when it's just him and I talking, and I've told the public on camera, there's days that I walk in the store and not even know if I'm looking at my daughter or not. There are days that I turn around and just keep staring, looking for the eyes, looking at, just looking, because I truly believe my child is out here. And I truly believe that Dr. K knows something. He knows more. Dr. K had an interaction with me. He wasn't just calling just to call, and he wasn't making a mistake when he called either. He called because he had seen my daughter prior to calling me. You can't call with a prognosis without seeing the patient first. He saw my daughter that day. And I just want to know what happened afterwards.
LaShonda, our hearts go out to you. And we appreciate you for being so open and sharing your story. And we'll be following up, and we are here to support you. John, thank you for joining us today as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have more news coming up on Roland Martin Unfiltered, streaming live on the Black Star Network. We'll be right back.
Next on the Black Table with me, Greg Carr. Succession. We're hearing that word pop up a lot these days as our country continues to fracture and divide. But did you know that idea, essentially a breaking up of the USA, has been part of the public debate since long before and long after the Civil War, right up to today? On our next show, you'll meet Richard Crichton, the author of this book, who says breaking up this great experiment called America might not be such a bad thing. That's on the next Black Table, right here on the Black Star Network.
My name is Bill Duke, and you're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
A new investigation from the Marshall Project finds that more than 70,000 mothers in 21 states were referred to law enforcement over flawed drug tests during pregnancy. Data from 3 states tracking prescription cases show thousands of new mothers were reported to police solely based on medications their doctors prescribe. The Marshall Project also reviewed data from 15 states and found that in more than half of the cases, child welfare agencies determined there was no abuse or neglect. Yet police had already been notified. In many instances, law enforcement continued criminal investigations even after child welfare authorities declined to take further action. In 13 states, all reports are automatically sent to law enforcement before any further review. Advocates and legal experts are calling in the criminalization of pregnancy. And joining us now to discuss their findings are reporters of the Marshall Project, Shoshana Walter and Jill Castellano. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thanks so much for having us.
So, Jill, we'll start with you. Tell us a little bit more about what this report reveals.
Absolutely. So what we were able to find here was 70,000 cases in 21 states where women were referred to law enforcement over allegations that they used substances during pregnancy. The way this normally works, oftentimes it begins with a positive drug test that happens at childbirth. So the mom is in the hospital, the newborn or the mother gets tested during childbirth and they test positive for a drug. That's the vast majority of these cases. As a result of a positive test, a lot of hospitals will flag that case, will report it to a child welfare agency in the state. And then, depending on that state's policies, child welfare can report the case further over to a law enforcement entity, depending on, the network of laws and policies that the agency is following. So what this data is showing is that there are 70,000 cases where child welfare has taken that extra step and gotten the police or the prosecutors involved. This is data for 21 states covering a 6-year period. It took us a year to gather it, to verify it. We contacted every state child welfare agency. We worked with the federal government. It was really, really hard to track down, really hard to verify, but we ultimately landed on this number. And we know that it's a significant undercount because it's only 21 states. But I think it really shows that there is this huge, expansive pregnancy surveillance system that's way beyond what we knew previously.
Shoshana, in more than half of the cases, the state admits there was no neglect. So who's held accountable maybe for all the trauma inflicted on these mothers?
I know it's quite incredible. And that's something that really shocked me as well when we were reporting on this, that so many women, thousands of women, are being referred to the police, even though they haven't actually taken any illicit substances during pregnancy. In some cases, in thousands of cases, all they took was a prescription medication legally as prescribed. And one of the things that Jill mentioned is that it often starts with these drug tests. Most hospitals are using urine drug screens that are fast and cheap, but very easy to misinterpret and have false positive rates as high as 50%. So we have seen women reported to the police, interrogated, arrested, jailed, even after all that they used was a prescribed medication. They ate poppy seeds. They took very common over-the-counter medications. Even from the fentanyl in their epidurals, women have been reported and jailed over these allegations.
And Jill, what do we know about the racial disparities here?
Well, the data itself doesn't elaborate on race, but we do know that women of color are much more likely to be impacted and they're more likely to be drug tested. And so this really does have a disproportionate impact on people of color and absolutely has racial disparities and major implications.
Shoshana, what does this do to the trust in the healthcare system? Are women now afraid to seek prenatal care because it could possibly lead to an arrest?
Absolutely. I mean, we've heard from so many women who, after seeing this story, have said, I want to avoid the hospital now. And among the many, many women that I've interviewed, these kinds of encounters just lead to enduring trauma and really lead to a loss of trust in our healthcare system. And it's not just women that I've interviewed. I've also interviewed women. I've also interviewed doctors, nurses, social workers who have seen the negative impact this has had on their patients, disagree with the policies, and yet hospital drug testing remains an extremely common practice in hospitals across the United States. And as Jill said, Black women, Native American women, Hispanic women, low-income women are all much more likely to be drug tested when they give birth. They're much more likely to be investigated. And if they lose their children to the child welfare system, it's so much harder for them to actually get those children back.
Let's bring in our panel to see if they have any questions for you both tonight. Candace Kelly, we'll begin with you.
So I was wondering, in terms of the process, let's say that somebody is tested and it's found out that they have drugs in their system. What happens at that point? The police come right to the hospital and the person doesn't see their child until there's some type of judicial process. What happens there?
Candace, the first part of your question cut off a little bit, but I think I understand what you're asking. Oftentimes what happens is the child welfare authorities will be called first. And sometimes the notification is made to police immediately. Sometimes there's a bit of a delay. But what we've seen again and again is police actually showing up in hospital rooms, interrogating women, questioning women right after they've given birth, sometimes while still under the influence of medications they received during labor. So they may not be in the right headspace or condition. They're certainly incredibly exhausted from having given birth. And they're now met with a social worker and an armed police officer in their hospital room asking them questions. In other cases, we've seen police show up at women's homes to remove their children. And there have been many cases of mothers who had child welfare cases, were allowed to keep their children. And then 2 months later, they get a call and it's the police and there's a warrant for their arrest. This happened to one of the women that we spoke with for our recent story, Ayana Harris Rashid. She's a mom of 4 who was living in South Carolina when this happened. She gave birth. During her pregnancy, she ate CBD gummies to help with extreme pregnancy nausea, legal CBD gummies. When she gave birth, because of that CBD gummy and how imprecise these drug tests are, she and her newborn son tested positive for marijuana. Child welfare was called, cases opened. Ayana was able to keep her newborn with her, although she had to be supervised by her own husband. And then just a few months later, police called her. She was sitting up in bed, scrolling on her phone, breastfeeding her newborn son. And police called and told her that there was a warrant out for her arrest and that she had to immediately turn herself in on a felony charge. And Ayana had to stop breastfeeding her son, say goodbye to her husband and children, and turn herself in. And she spent the night in a cold and crowded jail cell. She was strip searched, completely dehumanizing in every way. And then by the time she was released, the stress of the experience, the separation from her son, she found she could no longer breastfeed him. The charge was eventually dropped, but I think this case shows, just what kind of vetting law enforcement officers are doing of these allegations. Many of these cases, these arrests, are based solely on these positive drug tests that are extremely unreliable and prone to error and false positive results.
Thank you.
Matt, what are your questions for the reporters of the Marshall Project?
So first, this is extremely worthwhile reporting. Thank you for bringing this to our attention. I actually had a case very similar to this exactly 10 years ago where I represented a woman here in Texas whose child was taken by CPS because there was a belief she was not going to take her psychiatric medications upon the birth of her baby. So they literally did an emergency removal, and I got involved in making sure CPS gave her baby. There were ultimately subsequent criminal charges on the basis of, neglect, and we beat those charges. We got them dismissed. But the reason I mention that is because the part of this I'm particularly interested in your reporting on is the nexus between the hospital and CPS, or whatever the equivalent is in the States. Because what a lot of people don't know is they have emergency removal, powers, right? So if they believe the baby's in immediate danger, they can take the baby under certain circumstances with judicial involvement. I'm interested in really two things. Number one, how many of the cases did you see were those situations where there was an emergency removal and then, the police were called either to the hospital or subsequently? And secondly, what did you find in terms of law enforcement's response, I guess, to those cases that didn't end up needing to be serious? And what I'm asking specifically is, you have a lot of false positives, or you have situations where a social worker or CPS worker thinks that there are grounds to remove the child, and then you look at it and the child's actually in a supportive, stable home, and that's not necessary. And I would imagine law enforcement would actually have an issue with expending those resources on the front end for no reason. So I know those are long questions, but I'm very interested in what your reporting yielded with respect to those two parts of it.
Yeah, that's a really good questions. And the child welfare agency aspect of this is what we spent so much time unpacking, because it's really convoluted, and these agencies follow these sort of like Byzantine labyrinth of rules and laws, and are making really, really consequential decisions, sometimes without all of the information that they may need. And so we're seeing cases where they get a positive drug test. In some states, 13 states, if they get an allegation of drug use during pregnancy, they're referring that case to law enforcement no matter what. It doesn't matter the circumstances of that case. The data that we have doesn't break down specifically how many times they're requesting help from the police with emergency removals, or how many times they're that CPS themselves is going in to try to remove that child. But we know that happens, and we know that in some states, the child welfare agency themselves cannot be the ones doing the removal of the child, and that it's required under that state's law that they get the police involved. Well, that has major consequences, because once the police they're flagged and they know about this case, they can do whatever they want with it, really. I mean, once it's in their hands, they can open an investigation. Even if CPS were to just contact them and say, hey, we're not sure about the safety of this situation, can you have somebody accompany a caseworker? Well, the police could then take matters into their own hands and launch an investigation if they want to. So it's very consequential when child welfare is getting police involved.
Michael, do you have a question to that?
Thank you. Brittany, can I actually ask a follow-up question?
Okay.
Sure. Absolutely, Matt.
I'm sorry. I'm very sorry about that. So the follow-up question I had was about CPS, and the question is, as it relates to CPS, what did you find in terms of the data, in terms of how often CPS was requesting these drug test results, or I guess basically how is that happening? Is it the hospitals are just getting these drug test results and reporting them to CPS? And I guess the second part of the question is, did you find a nexus with any women that had prior CPS allegations? And the reason I ask that is one of the worst travesties in our system is if you've ever had any contact with CPS, they almost never let you get away from it, right? It always follows you, any subsequent allegations, that kind of thing. So did you find that to be true in the reporting as well, that women with multiple allegations were kind of harassed?
I can jump in on this one. For the first part of your question, Watt, they're actually, most states and federal law do not require hospitals to drug test women who come in to give birth. Federal law only requires that hospitals notify child welfare agencies anytime a baby is born substance affected. And that could have, the definition of that can be interpreted in many different ways. But a notification isn't necessarily supposed to mean a child abuse and neglect report. But this is essentially what hospitals are doing to comply with this requirement. They do not have to drug test. Many of them do. And unfortunately, once a drug test result is in hand, it's a positive result, even if it's just based on this urine drug screen that is very imprecise with false positive rates as high as 50%, most states are then required to report that result. And so what happens again and again is that hospitals drug test new moms, the screen comes back positive, they immediately send it to child welfare authorities. And even if a more precise test is coming, child welfare authorities open up an investigation before that result has come. And the other thing that's, I think, really important to note is that in this country, for decades, we have had state laws, federal regulations over workplace drug testing. And in most cases, workers who are drug tested on the job are entitled to certain protections. They're entitled to a second, more precise confirmation test. They're often entitled to a review from a trained medical review officer who knows how to interpret the results and who can differentiate between a positive caused by something like poppy seeds versus heroin. Most workers are entitled to that under federal law. But when it comes to birthing moms, they are not entitled to those protections. Most states do not have any protections in place that would prevent someone giving birth from being punished due to a positive drug test. And so these test results are often automatically shared by hospitals to child welfare authorities. And then from there, child welfare authorities quickly open up investigations and sometimes execute removals of those newborns. And I've seen cases where, moms had investigations opened into them and a confirmation test actually was done. It came back negative, proving that the mom's result was a false positive. And CPS kept the case opened, likely in part due to, race and class concerns. Once a CPS case is opened, I'm sure from your experience, they can come into your home, they can inspect your refrigerator, they can, see how if your electricity bill is paid, they view all of these things as potential risk factors. And so once they're involved, it's incredibly difficult to get them uninvolved. And the consequences can be even more severe when CPS then shares that referral with police or prosecutors.
Michael, do you have a question?
Yes, I read about the story of Ayanna Harris Rashid, and I just had two quick questions. Number one, in the story, it said that she used legal CBD gummies and a topical hemp because she was dealing with nausea after giving birth to a child, and then she tested positive in a drug test at the hospital. So, is there in your research? Is there any guidance that you have found talking to doctors, talking to attorneys, whoever it is, when it comes to using different CBD products, hemp oils, things of this nature? We know that in most states you have recreational marijuana laws, you have medicinal marijuana laws. So because of these false positives, is there any type of guidance that you all have come across? And then the second quick question is, have you heard any movement from hospitals saying we need to change the type of drug test we're giving from the urine test to something that's more accurate?
Yeah, those are great questions. In terms of the false positives from CBD products, I would say that the mothers that I've talked to have never received any sort of caution from their doctors about, products to avoid, foods to avoid that might trigger a positive on a drug test. The thing I see again and again, in addition to CBD, are poppy seeds. The U.S. military actually now advises service members not to eat poppy seeds because they cause positive tests for opiates. Again and again, I've seen mothers reported to CPS and to police as a result of eating lemon poppy seed muffins, poppy seed bagels, a salad from Costco with poppy seed dressing. And their doctors never informed them to avoid something as simple as eating poppy seeds because it could produce a positive result in a drug test. In fact, many of these women did not even know that they were going to be drug tested when they went in to give birth. So that's another issue, that there's a lack of knowledge and consent for these drug tests in the first place.
Right.
Yeah, and to add to what Shoshana said, I think, there's levels of reform that we could see. We could see reform at the level of the hospital where they're notifying people if they have a policy around drug testing, or they're requiring confirmation tests. Then there's reform we could see at the state level where child welfare agencies could change their policies if they wanted to, or that the law could change. So that way we don't engage in these kind of mass referrals to law enforcement. We know in a place like Illinois, they changed their law. So they went from requiring pregnancy substance use allegations from being referred to police or referred to prosecutors in every single case to not requiring it, because they understand that it can be harmful for the newborn and for the mom. And then you also have the potential for reforms at the federal level, where maybe the federal level, the government could get involved in doing a better job at educating state agencies about the requirements, or even, passing some measures to make sure that this data is tracked so we understand the scope of the problem. I mean, there's a lot that can be done. We just learned that in New Jersey, there was a new law passed requiring confirmation testing, which is going to be the first state in the US that has that instituted. So there's lots of room for reform.
Reporters of the Marshall Project, Shoshana Walter and Jill Castellano, thank you so much for bringing your reporting here to us on the Black Star Network.
Thank you so
much.
Well, Roland Martin Unfiltered will be right back here on the Black Star Network. Stay with us.
With medicine and science under attack, I want to keep you and your family informed and healthy. I'm Dr. Ebony Hilton, and I knew at the age of 8 that I wanted to be a doctor. So I studied hard and became the first African-American female anesthesiologist hired at the Medical University of South Carolina since its opening in 1824. And I always say I was made into a doctor, but I was born to be a mom. And as a new mom, wife, sister, daughter, and friend, I understand how frightening a medical crisis can be. I care for individuals on some of the worst days of their lives, and it's my mission to provide you with a safe space to gain clarity on issues affecting your mind, body, and soul. I recognize that there are health disparities, particularly as it pertains to race, and I want to help bridge the gap between you and your healthcare providers. Join me every Thursday for Second Opinion on the Black Star Network, where each week I'll invite experts from various medical fields to share the latest health news. We'll discuss topics such as the vaccine debate, mental and sexual health, medical bias, infertility, menopause, andropause, nutrition, and aging. Together with my medical colleagues, we aim to provide you with a second opinion. Don't miss it, Thursdays only on the Black Star Network.
I'm Ryan Wilson, CEO and co-founder of The Gathering Spot, and you're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network.
Well, the U.S. District Court for the Southern District of New York ruled that Brian Flores, Steve Wilks, and Ray Horton's ongoing discrimination case against the NFL will proceed in open court. 4 years ago, Flores sued the NFL, alleging the league was rife with racism as it pertained to its hiring practices for coaches. Wilks and Horton joined the lawsuit after Flores' initial lawsuit. The ruling means that the Flores claims against the NFL, the Dolphins, the Giants, the Broncos, and the Texans will be litigated in court rather than arbitrated. It also applies to the claims made by Steve Wilks against the Cardinals and by Ray Horton against the Titans. The NFL sought to move the case to private arbitration, which would have had the commissioner, Roger Goodell, serve as the arbitrator. But this year, there were 10 head coach vacancies in the NFL, yet no black coach was hired. And last week, before the Super Bowl, NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell addressed the lack of diversity in this year's head coach hiring cycle.
I remember talking in your office back in 2019, and you had said that the league is always going to look at different things about hiring. Well, Since then, you guys have expanded the Rooney Rule. You have had put in a mandate to try to address the offensive side of the ball with the coaching fellowship program. And you also put candidates in front of the decision makers. But everybody knows that this cycle is over 10 for black coaches, 1 for 9 for coaches of color. So should you just be resigned to the fact now that basically nothing you do can move the numbers between 3 to 7 on coaches and 3 to 7 on general managers, those historic numbers that we've seen?
You know me too well to say I'm resigned to something where I think we need to continue to make progress. And I believe that. I believe diversity is good for us. I think we have become a more diverse league across every platform, including coaching. But we still have more work to do. There's got to be more steps. So we're reevaluating everything we're doing, including our accelerated program, including every aspect of our policies and our programs, to meet the challenges of today and tomorrow rather than yesterday. So we need to be looking at that and sort of say, okay, why did we have the results this year? What is it that we can be doing in training or education, and that goes for not just the candidates, but also the clubs, and how we can try to continue to increase the opportunities and the outcomes ultimately.
How bothered are you by the public perception that teams interview black candidates just to satisfy the Rooney Rule and not with no intention of hiring them? And then the second part of that would be, who do you think was the most important African American in the history of the NFL, this being Black History Month?
There's a lot in that category. And I think I would probably dispute your context of the question. I think the Rooney Rule has been seen as a positive by our clubs by giving them an opportunity to look at a diverse set of candidates. They make the choice ultimately, but I think it's shown them the value of that, to look at talent where you might not know it or you may not see it. We're in a competitive league. People are challenged, and we have 10 openings this year. Teams are trying to get the coach that they think can win. So I think taking the time pressure off of that is one of the things we focused on as a league in the policy, to give them that time so that they can make a really good decision that they make independently, but a decision that is based on being able to look at a diverse slate of candidates. And I think that only benefits the NFL. And the Rooney Rule, I think, has done that not just in the NFL, but I think across industries on a global basis.
I'm so interested to hear what the panel has to say about this tonight. Matt, we'll begin with you. This year, there were 10 head coach vacancies. Not a single black coach was hired. How does this happen in a league that's majority black on the field?
Because they think we're stupid. They think we're stupid and our eyes aren't open. You know, what I really would like to focus on, if you'd allow me though, Brittany, is the enormity of this ruling. Because what people may not know out there is that arbitration is basically a private court process. But what I didn't even know until preparing is that apparently the NFL Constitution allows Roger Goodell to be the one who rules on certain issues or farm them out to an arbitration. As a lawyer, I hate arbitration because I feel like it does not give my clients the same opportunity that they would have in front of 12 citizens in open court. But most of the time that you sign an agreement, you know, you download something from Apple or some other big company, they almost invariably have an arbitration clause in there. And the idea is to not have litigation every time somebody has an issue. You have to go through this private process. So I'm glad the Second Court of Appeals made the right decision and that the district court today followed that same logic, because this allows the issues to come to the light of day and allows the NFL to not, you know, cover them up by letting Roger Goodell call the balls and strikes, so to speak, on malfeasance, on misdoing, you know, wrongdoing. So this is a really, really big deal. And I don't know how it works on the federal level, but under Texas law, at least, an arbitration clause is not enforceable if it's against public policy. The reason I think this is huge in this instance is because all these employees of the NFL, all of the players, all of the people who are tangentially this could hopefully allow them to have more meaningful justice when they have bona fide claims that aren't going to get swept under the rug because the NFL gets to basically police itself. That's the functional outcome of this. So I think this is really an enormous ruling, and hopefully you see this cascade into other areas where arbitration clauses would otherwise be foreclosing justice.
Candace, what kind of evidence do you think may come out of discovery now that this is headed to court?
Well, listen, I think that's one of the most important things about this case is the case filing itself, where you can read all of the evidence that was filed by Flores's attorney, and he doesn't use a lot of legalese. He uses a lot of history of the football league, of blacks in the league, racial discrimination, and it's written in a way that really almost anybody can understand. And it's very, very important, I think, for a lot of people to look at that. So a lot of the evidence is in the filing, in the lawsuit in and of itself. What we heard in that soundbite was just a lot of waffling babble talk. I mean, he's asking questions that they've been asking since, 1920 when the NFL was founded. What are we going to do? We're trying to figure out how to make things better. I think that the Rooney Rule works. No, it doesn't. What are they going to do? They've been asking that forever, and they seem to not have any answers. The other thing is that when we look at this violation of civil rights and discrimination cases, even on a state level, there are ways for the attorney general to jump in and say, hey, you know what, there's a problem here and we're going to do something on the state level. No one's doing anything. The only one that's doing anything is Brian Flores. And the what has happened now in terms of moving the needle, this is big. This is huge precedent. And why would he want to go in front of arbitration? Like Matt said, why would you want the person who you are really suing, a representative thereof, deciding your case? That makes absolutely no sense. And I see exactly why they decided what they did. Brian Flores has a very good chance of winning because, as you mentioned, there were 10 spots open. They didn't get them. And since, again, 1920, we haven't seen these numbers move almost at all. So it would be a very interesting case to look at and follow.
Michael, if the NFL loses this case, what should real consequences look like?
Well, hopefully they will lose the case, and I'm going to answer 3 questions here. Now, I'll preface my comments with this caveat. I haven't watched the NFL game since Colin Kaepernick left the league, was blackballed from the league, and I ain't watched the Super Bowl either. Okay, so I'm in the same boat with my friend and fellow historian, Dr. Greg Carr. But hopefully they do lose, and this is exposing the racism in the league. And as Matt said, usually under arbitration, Roger Goodell, the league commissioner, who works for the team owners, okay, he usually oversees arbitration. So with this going to court, this is a whole new ball game, hopefully. And this goes once again to the racism that we see in the NFL, and the reason why you have 10 open spots and you don't African American coaches haven't gotten any of them is because the overwhelming majority of the team owners are white, and you're still dealing with a plantation system. The NFL players, 53% to 67% African American, depending upon the season. So this is good news. I followed this case a few years ago, going back to 2023. I think Brian Flores has a good case, and this is really exposing, once again, the NFL, and going to that question of the most important black quarterback, or however he phrased it, could be Doug Williams, who was the first African-American quarterback to lead a team to the Super Bowl in 1988, the Washington Redskins. But it could be Colin Kaepernick, because Colin Kaepernick led a movement by taking a knee. Unfortunately, a lot of people stabbed him in the back and didn't back him up, okay? Because that really could have manifested into something larger. At some point, Black people have to realize that we can't be distracted by entertainment, okay? And we give up being empowered because we want to be entertained, okay? So at some point we have to learn that we have to withdraw economically from things like the NFL. Stop watching the game, stop purchasing the jerseys, stop going to the game, stop financing this plantation system. Hopefully we'll wake up very quickly.
Well, we have plenty of news on the other side of the break. Stay with us. Roland Martin Unfiltered will be right back. You're watching the Black Star Network.
Global, Midwest-born, HBCU-educated with experience in newsrooms across the country. Well, I've teamed up with Roland Martin to bring to you The Breakdown. This isn't just news. It's our stories, our voice, our community. Join me for The Breakdown, Monday through Friday at midday, only on the Black Star Network.
Hey, everybody, I'm T.D. Jakes, and I want to encourage you to watch Roland Martin Unfiltered. It'll blow your mind.
Welcome back. Don Lemon pleaded not guilty during his arraignment hearing today in a federal courthouse in Minnesota. Lemon is facing 2 federal charges, conspiring to violate someone's constitutional rights and violating the FACE Act, which prohibits the use of force or threats to intentionally interfere with an individual's First Amendment right to practice their religion. These charges are related to a protest that took place inside a church on January 18th. Lemon maintains that he was working as a journalist and that he was not part of the group that harassed churchgoers. He has vowed to fight the charges.
Constitution and the First Amendment. I wanted to say this isn't just about me. This is about all journalists, especially here in the United States. First off, I'd like to thank everyone again for their support, to my colleagues, countless journalists around the world, the Lemon Nation, my family and my friends. You all have showed up for me in a real way, and I am extremely grateful for that. I feel it, I feel it, I feel it. For more than 30 years, I've been a journalist, and the power and protection of the First Amendment has been the underpinning of my work. The First Amendment, the freedom of the press, the bedrock of our democracy. The events before my arrest and what's happened since show that people are finally realizing what this administration is all about. The process is the punishment with them. And like all of you here in Minnesota, the great people of Minnesota, I will not be intimidated. I will not back down. I will fight these baseless charges, and I will not be silenced.
Lemon's defense team is planning to file a motion to declare the case unconstitutional. He's hired Joe Thompson, a former Minnesota federal prosecutor, to represent him alongside his lawyer, Abe Lowell. Lemon faces up to 1 year in federal prison. Let's bring in the panel. Let's talk about this. Candace Kelly, we'll begin with you. What are your thoughts about what happened to Lemon in the courtroom today?
Well, listen, as he said, this has to do with his First Amendment right. Of course, on the other side, the church and the Department of Justice are going to say that there was their First Amendment right and freedom of religion to associate with one another. But at the end of the day, there are so many rights that journalists have that historically have been protected and very well. Have they had to fight for them? Yes. Have they had to create precedent-setting cases? Yes. But we protect our sources. We are protected and have certain privileges when it comes to reporting, when it comes to copyright law. This, like Don said, and I've said this before on this show, this is just about the process of dragging him through and making him appear in court at a hearing and dragging him through even more, making him hire an attorney, making him pay for an attorney, and making it just be interruptive to his life. Because at the end of the day, if the courts do decide against the First Amendment, and it's the First Amendment because it's so important, that's why they made it the first one. If they decide to go against the First Amendment, that would be terrible precedent for not just liberal people like Don, but for everyone across the board. They'd never be able to apply it. It wouldn't make any sense. And it goes against the very construct of the Constitution. Now, you can argue a lot about the Constitution any way that you want, that it is for the people, that it is against the people. But this one right here, when it comes to journalism and what the courts have historically done, they have etched it that we have protections that other people do not have. And it is boldly and fiercely protected. Again, not without a fight, but it is protected.
Michael, would you say that this case is about protecting religious freedom, or is it about possibly punishing speech that the administration just doesn't like?
It's about protecting white religious freedom, okay? And it's about punishing African-American independent journalists, okay? Keep in mind, independent journalist Georgia Fort is also prosecuted in this case as well, because she was there also covering the protest as a journalist. So you have Don Lemon, who was on CNN. Now he's an independent journalist, very outspoken. He's been very outspoken against Donald Trump. You see him persecuted by this Trump regime, this thuggery, this rogue, lawless Trump administration. And Donald Trump, when he was on the campaign trail in 2024, he talked about protecting white Christians. Okay, and he has the office of interfaith. I forgot how this $60 Bible salesman, snake oil salesman, puts it, but he made that a issue in the 2024 election, and that Christians are being persecuted, things of this nature. He's talking about white Christians, and you have to couple this protecting white Christians along with the white Christian nationalism that Trump and MAGA push, and it's also in Project 2025 as well. So this is what we see playing out right now, and we see the Trump administration now all of a sudden, they don't support the First Amendment, okay? And then they don't support the Second Amendment because they're attacking Alex Pretty in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and said he shouldn't have brought a gun to a protest, but he was a lawful gun owner and held a concealed pistol license. So he was following the laws in Minneapolis, Minnesota. I guess they forgot about the January 6th insurrection and the armed thugs that showed up there. I guess maybe they shouldn't have brought the guns either. Okay, so you see, as they're trying to lay out this attack, you see that the attack is unraveling at the same time. It makes no sense whatsoever. But once again, this is promoting a white Christian nationalism. Now, you have Pastor Jamal Bryant, who's put out videos about a white pastor who came and interrupted one of his church services. And he says, Pam Bondi and the Department of Justice, they're not investigating that. They haven't brought any charges against him. Okay, so what's this FACE Act that you're talking about? Okay, so this is more nonsense coming from this fascist regime masquerading as a administration. But this is extremely dangerous, especially for African-American independent journalists. This is why the Black Star Network is so important, why people need to financially support it.
Matt, the defense plans to file a motion claiming the case is unconstitutional. Can you give us an idea of maybe what constitutional arguments could actually work here?
Yeah, so I mean, I think Candace and Michael both alluded to it. They're going to say that this was an expression of Don Lemon's not only First Amendment rights to just, be there and to speak, I guess, but also his rights as a journalist. I mean, it's unconstitutional. To your point earlier, Brittany, this is basically viewpoint discrimination, right? So I think they're going to attack it on all angles as it relates to his ability to associate with other people, right? His ability to speak, his ability to report on something. But more than that, I think just at its core, this is going to be an acquittal every day of the week for a couple reasons. First, I think the government is going to have a real problem with establishing a conspiracy, because my understanding of the way he's charged is he's charged with conspiring to divest another person or the churchgoers of their constitutional rights. And I know that they trotted it out in their indictment, but it's all BS. It's very, very thin, and it does not constitute a conspiracy, number one. Number two, mere presence is not tantamount to force, meaning if you're in that church, even if a ruckus starts, that's not the same as, facing someone with force. And I think what's going to happen is 12 people in the box, the jury is going to look at this and say, you are stretching this like Dalsim from Street Fighter, because it's not there at all. It is going to be an acquittal. I think it'll be a very short acquittal. I suspect the court will probably hem and haw about granting the motion to dismiss based on the constitutionality. But I think once they actually try this case, it is going to be a very, very, very big loss for the government, and it's going to be big egg on their face because they just can't make this case. And I think the fact that he's a journalist, and even more than being a journalist, just being there, from my reading of the indictment, I didn't see anything whatsoever that constituted a conspiracy or an overt act to take away somebody's constitutional rights to worship. I think Michael hit the nail on the head with this. This is a subterfuge. This is an attempt to make the law offensive just because they want to attack somebody whose viewpoint they don't like, to your earlier point, Brittany. And I think it's going to be a big, fat acquittal.
Well, this is a case that we will certainly keep our eyes on here at the Black Star Network. We have more news coming up. You are watching Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network, and we will be right back.
My brothers and my sisters, this is Bishop William J. Barber II, and I'm coming to you with an urgent call from repairers of the breach and all of our partners. From Wednesday, February the 11th to Saturday, February the 14th, it's time to love forward together. We are mobilizing from Wilks to Raleigh. This is a call to all who love voting rights, love justice and truth, who believe in health care for all, living wages, labor rights, and caring for every person in our communities, who believe in life and not shooting people down in the street. We march each morning, February the 11th, 12th, 13th at 9 a.m., beginning at St. James Christian Church in Wilson, North Carolina. And on February the 14th, we gather at Shaw University, march down Fayetteville Street, and we have a rally right there at 10 o'clock a.m. Join us for the Love Forward Together Mass People's Assembly and Moral March mobilization. Visit breachrepairers.org for everything you need to register. This is William J. Barber II, paid for by Repairers of the Breach.
What's up? It's Talib Kweli. I'm CEO. This is the Black Star Network.
Well, tonight we have more from Thursday's Senate confirmation hearing, which became a racial flashpoint following a heated exchange between Senator Cory Booker and Trump nominee Jeremy Carl. During the tense interaction, Booker accused the nominee of reducing him to the color of his skin, sparking one of the most explosive moments of the hearing. The confrontation quickly escalated into a broader debate about race, identity, and the future direction of U.S. policy.
Mr. Carl, I never thought I would have somebody that made a lot of the statements that you've made before the United States Senate, and I would love to discuss some of your comments. You're going to be working with international organizations. Do you think one race is superior than another race on the planet Earth?
Senator, absolutely not.
You don't. So do you think that America would be weaker if it was, say, 40% Jewish?
Senator, absolutely not in and of itself. I think the problem...
Well, why did you qualify that?
No, well, Senator, if you let me
itself?
finish, I do not. I believe that unity, as President Trump has said, rather than diversity, is a greater strength.
But why not simply say it doesn't matter what percentage of our population is Jewish?
Senator, it certainly doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
Senator, if I could finish, as somebody of Jewish origin myself, and I do want to take this moment to say, because there have been some comments made, one of my weaknesses, and we've discussed some that you may think in general are weaknesses, is sometimes I take an idea too far. And I made some comments in interviews about minimizing the effect of the Holocaust that were absolutely wrong. And I'm not going to sit here and defend them here. I just want to be very, very clear on that point. Again, had I been in Germany in that time, even though I'm a sixth-generation American, but had I not, I would have been killed just like anybody else.
I've heard you say that you regret some of your comments about Jews.
Absolutely.
Do you regret any other comments about any other races?
Senator, you would have to reference a certain comment, but I'm certainly not a perfect person, and I'm sure that I've made...
Do you regret any of your comments about Latino Americans?
Senator, I'm sure that if you read me every single comment I'd made about a group, there would be some that, upon consideration...
So you stipulate for this body that you have in your past made comments about Jews and Latinos and perhaps blacks that you perhaps regret?
Senator, thank you for the question. As a Calvinist who believes that we're all infinitely sinful and only redeemed through grace...
See, sir, we're sending you into a very diverse world.
Yeah.
And you can't say unequivocally that America, it doesn't matter what our racial makeup is. You believe it matters what the racial makeup of America is. Senator, do you believe it matters, yes or no, what the racial makeup of America is?
Senator, to echo President Trump, I believe
I don't want
unity
you to
rather
echo
than diversity.
President Trump. I want you to answer my question, yes or no. Does it matter what the racial makeup of America is?
Senator, I'll stand on my comment. Thank you.
What's your comment? Answer the question, yes or no.
Echoing President Trump, I believe unity rather than diversity is a strength.
So you have a problem if America grew to be more Latinos than white people?
Senator, the individual group is not important. This is a cross-societal.
What do you mean when you say that you believe in the Great Replacement theory?
Senator, thank you for that question. This refers to the intentional demographic replacement of Europeans in Europe. It was invented by Renaud Camus, who was a French scholar.
You think there's an active effort to, quote unquote, replace Americans right now?
Senator, I think the Democratic Party, through its immigration policies, has certainly shown signs of that.
And I don't understand that. So you are saying that if more Americans are Black or Latino Americans, that somehow weakens America because it puts whites in a minority?
Senator, I never said anything like that, nor do I actually believe that. I want to be very clear that regardless of country, if people generally share more in common, that's a strength.
Can I read you what you've said? Because it sounds like this. You said the Great Replacement is real, and they are going to try to make you pay for it. Who is they?
Senator, thank you for that question. I simply don't know from you reading that one isolated comment.
So this is the problem. You make the most incendiary comments that you admit that you regret about Jews, about Latinos, about Blacks. And you sit here and say that you do not have a worldview, that somehow our country is weakened based upon the populations of each. In fact, you say in your writings that it is a threat to the United States of America and create an us versus them. And the only interpretation I can have of us versus them is it's white people against others, which sounds deeply racist to me. That somehow you think our country's greatness depends upon its ethnic diversity, as long as white people have more numbers than others. That does not sound like a nation that was founded with the belief that all people are created equal and equal before the eyes of God. It sounds like you have a racial hierarchy. There's no way for me to read this in any other way.
Senator,
because you have said our country, based upon religious diversity, based upon ethnic diversity, based upon racial diversity, you have indicated that somehow those make America weaker or stronger, that God forbid our nation grows in population, that then you suddenly say, I'm aggrieved, and they are trying to replace us. This is the United States of America. We are one nation under God, but you cut us up and divide us along racial lines.
Senator, respectfully, I do not think that they do.
You cannot use the word respectfully, because you do not respect me.
Oh,
you
no,
look
actually,
upon
I do.
me as my color of my skin. You say holidays like Juneteenth are racial hustles. Don't come here and hustle me.
Senator,
you have said statements that other nations are going to look upon you and read plainly. When you go to a country of a different religion or ethnicity, you have discriminated against Jews in your writing, you have discriminated against others, and then you claim yourself as a victim. Mr. Chairman, I've never seen such a blatantly racist individual who doesn't even deny that he's made these statements, but wants to tell us that he regrets them, and yet still believes that this body, who is committed to principles of equality, who is committed to ideals of our founders, that you're not in direct violation to the ideals and values and principles. And the last thing I want to say, I watched people beat others when they attacked the Capitol, viciously attack police officers. Brian Sicknick, a New Jersey resident, was beaten near death and would die days later. and you say those violent felons, you literally have said that they were treated worse than people during Jim Crow. When thousands of Americans were lynched, murdered, beaten, and killed, you equate Capitol Hill rioters with receiving worse treatment than Americans during Jim Crow, which even some of the worst people who participated in that violence and beatings have come forward decades later and said, I was wrong. It is shameful that when this body ran for its life, when they had gallows for the vice president put outside, when they tried to stop the peaceful transfer of power, that you would equate those people to the folks that were victimized and terrorized by white nationalist organizations like the KKK. Sir, you have no decency. You have no honor. You say inflammatory things because it thinks it will ingratiate you to those who are paying your salary. And you sit here before me and try to wrap yourself in the American flag? Well, I believe in this nation. I believe in the principles. I believe in those who fought and died for our country. You disgrace that legacy and the ideals that we all swear an oath to uphold, that does not believe in one nation for one people and another people. Dear God, I pray for us if we let somebody like you represent us to the diverse nations of the world as representing the values of our country.
Senator, I absolutely deplore Jim Crow, but I do not agree with the characterization that you have done of my views.
Michael, let's begin with you. What did this hearing expose?
It didn't expose anything that I didn't tell you in 2023 or 2024 about Donald Trump. He's a white nationalist, white supremacist. This is his nominee. This is Project 2025. This is the fear of the browning of America. I'm glad Senator Cory Booker just wore Jeremy Carl's ass out. But no, this is not new. This is the fear of the browning of America. This is promoting the white replacement theory, promoting white erasure. And I posted on my Facebook fan page early in the week, I said, this is a horrible week for MAGA. First, you had Bad Bunny performing at Super Bowl 60 and got 128 million viewers of his halftime performance, and it was all in Spanish. And that pissed off MAGA. They're still complaining about that. And then we got the news that minority births have outpaced white births for the first time in history. And they said that only 49.6% of the births in America were white births, and 50.4% of the births of America were made up of Latinos, Hispanics, Black, and Asians. Okay? This is what Jeremy Carl and Donald Trump and people like him fear. They fear that by the year 2043, they're no longer going to be the majority population. This is what Project 2025 is about. This is why Elon Musk is obsessed with birth rates and why they want and why they want white women to stay in the kitchen, stay at home, have more children. And if you take this back to 2017, Matt reads The Atlantic every day. He reads The Atlantic all the time. The Atlantic magazine had an article that talked about how the 2016 presidential election, it said that white non-college educated voters who voted for Trump, it said their driving factor was not the economy. They said it was cultural anxiety. They said it was their fear that they were going to be overran by Latinos and African Americans, non-white people, and what would happen to them. Okay. Then the 2020 census came out in April 2021, and it showed that the population of white people dropped below 60% for the first time since 1790 when the first census was taken. It dropped to 57%. Okay. So this is what I've been talking about. This is what Roland's book, White Fear, is about. So I'm glad this is being exposed. This doesn't teach me anything or tell me anything that I didn't already know. I'm just glad Black Star Network is showing it.
Well, Matt, what does it say about America that someone with a documented history of racist and sexist rhetoric can still be considered for a top State Department position?
You know, Brittany, that's such an astute question, and you kind of took all of the wind out of my sails, because that's exactly what I was about to say. I was going to say that shows you how far gone we are, that they can promote a virulent racist who has the audacity to continue tweeting and, furthering statements while he awaits the confirmation. And they can promote this to be the person that is one of our front faces to the world, a world in which there's currently crazy anxiety, even across the pond, with white people in Europe who don't know what the orange man is doing in trying to co-opt Greenland, right? So, I mean, the idea that this administration would put forward someone who is so far beyond the pale shows you how far beyond the pale we are as a country. And what I think is particularly insidious about people like this is, you notice they say all of these horribly racist, virulent, unequivocally terrible things, but then they get in front of the Senate and they try to act genteel and they try to say, oh, it's respect. And, maybe you're taking it out of context and I didn't quite mean it that way. I need to walk some of these things. But no, when you're tweeting and you're saying all these hateful things about people, that is the truth of who you are. And the idea that the administration would think he's the right person to put up is extraordinary. And if you notice, some of the strongest pushback is actually coming from a Republican senator from Utah, John Curtis, who's saying this is not the right person for us to put forward because of his anti-Israel and anti-Jewish statements. So it's crazy to me that this would be a person that they would ever let get through their vetting process to even put in front of the Senate. But I think that's proof positive of just the craziness that we're in this society, and also the brazenness of this Trump administration. I think Michael's right, and to his credit, he's been saying this the last several years, but they're trying to find, in my opinion, as far out as they can go and change, I think, what's called the Overton window to see what people will accept. And this would be beyond the pale last decade. I mean, even 10 years ago, the idea that a presidential administration would promote someone like this would be unfathomable. And this is common fare now. So I'm glad he got the pushback that he did.
Candace, what does this say about the stakes of the 2026 and 2028 elections?
Oh my goodness. Well, it tells us that plain and simple, like Matt and like Mike have said, that we always knew this was out there. It's the hats are off, the masks are off. There's a bigot in the house. And what? This is nothing new. This is a tune that we've been dancing to for a long time, or they've been dancing to. I think what's so remarkable is just to actually see him there, having, been thumb thugging and so keyboard confident in everything that he says. And then he's sitting there and being berated as he should have been and taken down by Senator Booker. And all of a sudden, I'm going to piggyback off of Matt, acted like he didn't know what was going on. He had tears in his, he was going to spontaneously combust from the whooping that he got from Senator Booker, as well he should. And that on another level is someone that we don't need either. Someone who cannot even, stand up for what they even believe in. What he's doing is he was step and fetching to the highest payer, to the highest panhandler. And this is where he is, looking embarrassed, someone of Jewish descent, though he converted to Christianity and said that the Holocaust survivors should just get over the Holocaust. This is not a man that has anything worth even dignifying. I mean, I'm glad we're talking about it, but we have seen his type coming and we've seen his type going. And he's probably going to be one of the ones that goes.
All right, we want to thank you all for your comments, and we'll get to more news right after the break. You're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered, streaming live on the Black Star Network. We'll be right back.
On a next, A Balanced Life with me, Dr. Jackie, a relationship that we have to have. We're often afraid of it and don't like to talk about it. That's right, we're talking about our relationship with money. And here's the thing, our relationship with money oftentimes determines whether we have it or not. Balancing your relationship with your pocketbook, that's next on A Balanced Life with me, Dr. Jackie, here at Black Star Network.
I'm Mark Morial, President and CEO of the National Urban League, and I'm watching the Black Star Network.
Well, there was a heated exchange between Missouri Republican Senator Josh Hawley and Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison during Thursday's Senate Homeland Security Committee hearing. Ellison was testifying about fraud during the immigration oversight hearing, which ended with Hawley telling Ellison he ought to be in jail.
Mr. Ellison, let me start with you. You're the Attorney General of the state of Minnesota. Do I have that correct? That's a yes?
Sir, you're aware of my job. You know the answer to that.
You're not going to answer my questions? Are we going to start this way? Are you the Attorney General of the state of Minnesota, yes or no?
You know the answer.
Mr. Ellison, you're in my courtroom now. You're under oath. So I suggest that you answer my questions. You the Chief Law Enforcement Officer of the state of Minnesota, yes or no? Let's try another question. Are you familiar with the $9 billion in historic fraud out of your state, including the $250 million in the Feeding Our Future program alone? You familiar with that? Don't turn to the pages in your book to get your potted answers. Are you familiar with it? Yes or no?
Yes, I am familiar with it.
Very familiar, aren't you? Because the people who ran the Feeding Our Futures program came to you in your official office in the state capitol December 11th, 2021, and asked for your help in getting investigators off their backs. They complained to you for upwards of an hour about state investigators going after them, and they begged you to help them, and you agreed to it, amazingly. And we know you did.
That's not
because
true.
It's all caught on tape.
Yeah,
Every single sentence is caught on tape. Here's what you said. Let's take a look.
Obviously, you
said, it's not a question. You said to them, send me the names of all these folks who are investigating them. You said to them, send me their names. And I'll take that list and I'll call the person over at Education who is investigating them and say, what's going on? Why am I getting these complaints? Then you went on to say, I already have my team working on this. What day should we get together to discuss it again? You made pledge after pledge to them. You said, we've got to make sure this guy who's investigating them stops it. You said, you have my attention. I'm concerned about this. You said, let's go fight these people, meaning the people who are investigating the fraud. Why'd you do it? Why'd you help them?
Are you going to let me answer?
Please, we're all ears.
So first of all, you're cherry picking quotes out of there.
Why did you help them?
I thought you were going to let me answer.
Why did you help them?
Are you going to let me answer?
Why did you help them?
You let me answer and I'll answer you.
Tell the truth and I'll let you answer.
I will tell the truth.
Good.
Let's do that.
That'd be a nice change. Why'd you help them?
Now see, Mr. Chairman, I didn't come here to be insulted. I came here voluntarily.
You came here for the truth. Let's have it. Why did you help them? The quotes are here. They're in black and white, and every member of this audience can listen to the recording. It's 54 minutes long. It's all in public. You can Google it right now and listen to it.
And listen to it all.
Why'd you help them?
First of all, I didn't help them.
You did help them.
No, I did not. I certainly didn't.
You're saying you didn't do anything for them. You didn't.
Well, wait a minute.
I already have my team working on this again. That's not you?
I have my team assisted with the information that led to the prosecution and conviction of these people.
No, you didn't. You didn't lift a finger to prosecute them. No, you did not. You didn't lift a finger to prosecute them.
Federal prosecution.
You had, BS. You had whistleblowers come to you as early as 2019.
You're the one talking BS.
Hey, listen, it's my time.
Doesn't know what you're talking about, sir.
No, sir. You now have encountered the truth and you don't like it. Why'd you take their money? Why'd you take their money?
I didn't.
You took $10,000.
No, that's a false statement.
$10,000 9 days after the meeting.
False statement.
You took $10,000. Here's what happened. They went to your office.
They
solicited money from you. They solicited help from you.
That's also wrong.
They came to your office. It was your official office. You met with them for 54 minutes.
No, they didn't.
They asked you for help. You pledged it to them, and they talked repeatedly about money. In fact, it's all they talked about.
That's a lie.
Money, 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 money. They said, we will put our dollars in the right place. We will support candidates that will fight to protect our interests. You replied, that's right. They said, if you are secure in your donor base and secure in your power base, you can act the way you want. You replied, money is freedom. They said the amount of money circulating, I'm reading the transcript, the amount of money circulating in our community today is powerful, and we haven't realizing it in a meaningful way. And you said, give me the specifics. And 9 days later, you took $10,000 from people who were then indicted. It's in your reports. Why'd you do it?
Sir,
was it worth it?
You know what? This is a theatrical performance.
10,000. This is the truth. This is what accountability looks like, of which you've had none. You helped fraudsters defraud your state and this government of $9 billion, and you got a fat campaign contribution out of it. You ought to be indicted.
True. Well,
that's the truth.
I think we've made the point. Let's keep the tenor just
for
a
the
little
record.
more calm.
I'll ask how I want
He's
to,
lying,
Paul.
and that's the truth.
Oh no, this is all on the record,
no, sir.
Did you bother to? Did you bother to investigate where the money that you facilitated their fraud for, where it went? Do you know where it went, what it was used for, the fraudulent money? I do, because we just heard testimony about it yesterday.
Because we were key players in the
hundreds of millions of dollars to terrorist groups, to transnational criminal organizations, to the drug trade, to drug trafficking, to child trafficking. And you took $10,000
That's a lie.
And helped them do it. You know, the other thing is, whistleblowers came to you as early as 2019. Let's look. As early as 2019, whistleblower. Don't talk over me. As early as 2019, it's my hearing, pal. As early as 2019.
Don't call me
whistleblowers came to, well, I should call you prisoner because you ought to be in jail.
Well, we'll see what you can do about it.
In 2019, whistleblowers came to you in your office and referred to you fraud allegations from Feeding Our Futures, and you blew them off. Listen, your own state newspaper investigated it. The Minnesota Star Tribune, the Partners in Nutrition, brought its concerns to the Attorney General's office in 2018 and in 2019, and you did nothing. You did nothing for years. The only action you took is, once all these fraudsters came to your office and asked you to get involved and offered you money, then you got involved. Then you took the money, and then you got involved.
They did not come to my office. You're completely wrong about that.
You met with them for 54 minutes, and you took $10,000, and they also gave your family money. They gave your family thousands of dollars in campaign contributions in addition to what they gave
false
you.
Statement.
Let's put
this is completely untrue.
The New York Post.
Yeah, we know the New York Post.
Minnesota Keith Ellison, AG, accepted campaign donations from individuals linked to the $250 million COVID fraud scheme after they were in your office. The donations came on December 20th.
Sir,
you met with them on December the 11th, and on January 20th, the FBI knocked over their headquarters.
No.
That's the sequence of events here.
No, it's not.
You've been right at the center of this fraud thing from the beginning, and you've enabled it. And, sir, you should resign.
And, sir, you should resign. I was thinking the same thing about you.
Should resign.
I was thinking the exact same thing about you.
I'm sure after encountering this truth, you are, because it hurts to have accountability, doesn't it?
Because after this parade of lies and presentation, I think you should be ashamed for misrepresentation.
Candace, let's start with you. How should we respond when a sitting senator uses this kind of rhetoric on national TV against a Black elected official?
Right. And then kept asking him questions and really didn't want to actually hear the answer. He really didn't give him the opportunity to explain any of the context. And in any court, as he said, this is my court, you're going to need context in terms of what's the evidence that we're looking at. That's number one. Number two, there were some, 76 people who were indicted as a result of this fraud that was taking place, that the Attorney General said, hey, we did in fact help the authorities get these people who did come to my office. I mean, you can kind of piecemeal that together. If there was any issue or if he was involved on any level, don't you think the prosecutors would have already brought him in and deposed him? He wasn't deposed in any one of those cases so far, albeit there's light that is shown on him and maybe now he will be called. But this has been going on for 4 years. So in terms of his involvement in the fraud, some financial transaction and wire fraud of some sort that he could have been brought on, because that's what the other people who were indicted, they were brought on those particular charges. He had nothing to do with it so far, or else wouldn't the prosecutors already called him to the task? They did not. So this is, just a word salad on the part of Crawley. And we've seen it before. And it's also just a painful way of listening to, as he said, his court, and asking a witness, if you will, questions and not letting him answer. It's just a bad way of doing legal business, congressional business, and business when you are elected by the people.
Michael, how does this clash fit into the bigger picture of how Black leaders are scrutinized for alleged wrongdoing?
Well, this is white nationalism and white supremacy on display. Now, punk ass Josh Hawley, who gave a fist in the air to the January 6th insurrectionists, and then ran like a little punk when things got too hot. That's the same Josh Hawley of Missouri. Okay, for people, just so people understand, he's up for re-election this year. Vote this son of a bitch out of office. This is why elections have consequences. This you don't understand, right? Donald Trump just said today that there's going to be nationwide, something like nationwide voter ID, whether it's passed or not. He said that for the 2026 midterm elections. These people are literally, these white nationalists, white supremacists, MAGA, they're literally scared to death of the 2026 midterm elections because they know if Democrats take back control of the House of Representatives, possibly take back control of the Senate, they know Trump's regime, that it will put the handcuffs on a lot of this, and there could possibly be some type of impeachment processes as well. If not for Trump, it could be for attorney generals, things of this nature. Okay, and they see that in election after election, special election after special election, Democrats are either winning or outperforming. Okay, so Josh Hawley is trying to make the highlight reels on Fox News, and he will. But he'll also make the highlight reels on Black Star Network, the African History Network show, and others. So we have to understand this is straight out of Project 2025. And to Attorney General, State Attorney General Keith Ellison, to his point, that investigation into feeding our future, the fraud scheme, that started under the Biden-Harris administration in 2022. U.S. Attorney announces federal charges against 47 defendants in $250 million feeding our future fraud scheme. Tuesday, September 20th, 2022. This is from justice.gov, the website of the Justice Department. That investigation started under the Biden-Harris administration. So Josh Hawley is just grandstanding, but vote his ass out of office.
Matt, would you say Hawley's approach here is part of a broader strategy to criminalize or discredit Democratic leadership?
Yes, and I rolled my eyes because I knew you were going to go to Michael first, and I knew he was going to steal about 80% of what I wanted to say, Brittany. So thank you, brother, for doing that. And he was spot on. I mean, since I saw in real time Josh Hawley throw that fist in the air and then learned about him running in the halls of the Capitol, he has been probably the person I hate in the United States Congress the most. This guy was valedictorian of his high school. He went to Stanford and Yale Law School. He's not a dummy by any means. This is all pageantry. It's all performative. It's all to try to hopefully fill the power vacuum that will hopefully be left when the orange man is gone. That's what it is. This is all about playing games, and it's all about criminalization. You know what's interesting? If we didn't have legislative immunity, you could actually sue him for defamation. Now, I don't know all the truth of what Mr. Ellison took in terms of campaign money or any of that kind of stuff. But what I do know is generally when you have malice, when you have somebody who is making completely false statements and they're malicious and they're intended to, advance false claims against you and what you've done, you can generally bring a lawsuit. That's not going to happen here. But to answer your question in a roundabout way, yes, I think that's what we see in general. That's why the buzzwords these days from this Republican administration is all about criminalization, investigation. People need to go to jail. All this allegation about law breaking, when in fact we see all the law breaking happening in their own neck of the woods, all the things that they're doing that violate not only the Constitution, but the law. In fact, NPR had a podcast this week about how the Trumps have enriched themselves something to the tune of like $4 billion since the second administration with crypto deals and with the Qatari plane and all the other things. So, I mean, we're seeing this in real time, and this is a matter of just, pointing fingers at other people to hide your own hands. But Josh Hawley in particular is the one who incenses me the most because all of this is pageantry. It's all a game. To Michael's point, it's all about making the Fox News highlight reel. And those crazy red meat, wanting folks that are Trumpers are eating this up. This is about pageantry for them. It's not about actually doing any service for the American people. And I hope the people of Missouri vote him out because he is a cancer to the United States Congress.
Well, I want to thank you all for joining us tonight and for your comments. Matt Manning, civil rights attorney from Corpus Christi, Texas. Candace Kelly, a legal analyst and host, Not All Hood in South Orange, New Jersey. And also Michael Imhotep, host of the African History Network show in Detroit, Michigan. Thank you all for being with us here on Roland Martin Unfiltered.
All right, thanks.
All right, we'll be right back. You're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered, streaming live on the Black Star Network.
My brothers and my sisters, this is Bishop William J. Barber II, and I'm coming to you with an urgent call from repairers of the breach and all of our partners. From Wednesday, February the 11th to Saturday, February the 14th, it's time to love forward together. We are mobilizing from Wilks to Raleigh. This is a call to all who love voting rights, love justice and truth, who believe in health care for all, living wages, labor rights, and caring for every person in our communities, who believe in life and not shooting people down in the street. We march each morning, February the 11th, 12th, 13th at 9 a.m., beginning at St. James Christian Church in Wilson, North Carolina. And on February the 14th, we gather at Shaw University, march down Fayetteville Street, and we have a rally right there at 10 o'clock a.m. Join us for the Love Forward Together Mass People's Assembly and Moral March mobilization. Visit breachrepairers.org for everything you need to register. This is William J. Barber II, paid for by Repairers of the Breach.
How you doing? I'm Mark Curry, and you're watching the Black Star Network. That's why I got these glasses on, because that black star is bright.
It's day 3 of the Wilson to Raleigh Moral March, and participants have arrived in the capital city of North Carolina. Marchers began their 50-mile journey from Wilson on Wednesday to mobilize voters for the upcoming primary election. The march focuses on key issues such as voting rights, healthcare access, and higher wages. Black Star Network has been providing coverage of the event. Here's a recap of what happened today.
All right, Reverend. For the folks who've been watching the stream at home, but some might just now be tuning in, can you tell them briefly where we are and why we're here?
You know, I'm really thinking about where we are.
Where are we?
People coming from Utah, somebody's Mississippi, somebody just said they came in 300 miles from another state. Yep. When I look out here and I see old and young, black and white, every race, every creed, every color, something is happening. People are tiring of this entrenched authoritarianism and meanness, and they don't want to be like it to fight it. They want something different. Young man just handed me a piece on how to put love in politics. They want us to believe again. As Langston Hughes said, take back our mighty dream again. America was never America to me, but I swear this oath it shall be. But we also just saw the kind of coalition that the greedy are afraid of. Now, everybody couldn't walk, of course, but they walk for others. Many will be here at the rally, but thousands upon thousands of people are online, and they're resonating. They're sending notes. They're saying, this is right. We've got to voice our love, vote our love, live in the vitality of our love, and be victorious in love. We're not talking about nothing weak and easy. We're talking about that hard love that says, I will fight every day for voting rights because I love voting rights and what the promises of this Constitution. I think we're at a turning point. When people walk 51 miles, some of these folk didn't quit. Mm-hmm. When people decide, I've been scared enough, I've stayed back enough, I've stayed down enough, and they start standing up, you can't stop it. And this is organic. We didn't have enough. We didn't put money for people to come out here. They don't own staff. We didn't know how many people showed up when we said do it. We just said do it, and folk just came. And I was surprised in the communities we went through who were crying. Some of them were saying, we're glad of this. So now where we are is we must organize from the mobilization. You got to have organization from the mobilization and infrastructure. So you mobilize to an event, you organize from it.
Now, talk for a moment about where we came from and where we are now. We started in Wilson, and we moved
in deep eastern North Carolina in Wilson.
And not a ton of political organization always happens on that side of the state, is it?
And that's the problem, because you can't win this state, and many country states, without going what we call east of 95. And oftentimes, particularly in national politics, when they come in here, they walk away. They do Charlotte, Greensboro, Winston-Salem, Raleigh, and they think they've done it. No, down east is where much of the civil rights movement happened before it happened anywhere else. Down east is where black and white folk who are connected through tobacco and corn and peanuts have found ways to come together. Down east is where you have some of the poorest communities and poorest schools. So an agenda for full public education, agenda for living wages and addressing poverty would work down east. It's down east that Trump is trying to steal a district. And believe you me, he wouldn't try to do it if it wasn't powerful.
Now explain that to folks. Not everyone's from North Carolina. What did Trump try to do here?
Well, what he's done so far, and we're fighting it in court, and we're going to fight it with massive mobilization to the polls, he basically called into the state and said, I need an extra member of the House of Representatives to ensure that I have a majority. Go down in the 1st Congressional District, the district that was put into place only after 90 years of struggle when the last African American was thrown out in 1901. Go down there and take it. It's a predominantly black district, but it's a district where black and white and brown people have traditionally worked together to elect candidates of their choice. Go down there and take it. Go down there and stop it. Go down there and change the district. Claim it's partisanism, but in actuality it's racism. Use it to divide people. Give it a majority, so-called MAGA Republican majority, but they made a mistake. And the mistake is they based their whole plan on 45% turnout. They didn't base on us doing this. They didn't base it on the movement. They didn't base it on people turning out and coming out like never before. But it was a horrendous, ugly, mean as the big, bad, deadly, ugly, destructive bill, because what they're saying is they want to determine the election before a vote is counted, and they want to put people in office who they can guarantee will vote against health care, vote against living wages, vote against public education, vote against the people. And if they can't have it, they'll steal it. But what the people are saying is nobody would steal something that wasn't valuable. You don't go around stealing that which is invaluable. And they didn't just steal it, they robbed us. They did it in the bright daylight. And one thing you know about a robber cases the joint before they rob. You know, even if they do it outside, they check it out. They're not going to waste their effort to rob on just anything. If they're going to rob you, they're going to really take something. And so this was a robbery that we've got to fight in the street, at the ballot box, and in the courts.
Now, we've started to see across the country backlash to these types of attempts from Donald Trump. We've seen in special elections and in some other off-year elections responses from electorates that look different than we might have otherwise expected. Texas districts that are plus 20-something Republicans, suddenly a Democrat is showing up and winning. Right?
They're winning.
And so what do you think the message should be taken from that is, and how does that fit with the work that's happening here in North Carolina? Is obviously we're in a midterm election year. Early voting for this primary started yesterday. Can you speak to me about the movement and the work you all are doing and how it fits, while it's not explicitly partisan, how it fits within the context of the elections and in some ways both the resistance and the response to the current administration?
Well, a couple of things. You're right in that we did this deliberately doing same-day registration and early voting. So as we were marching to Raleigh, people are marching to the polls. They can register and vote the same day. We won that by people coming together in 2007. We didn't always have that in North Carolina, but we brought together a coalition that pushed Democrats at the time to do the right thing. There is a backlash because what you find out is if you take my health care, the denial of health care doesn't cause just black folk to die. It doesn't just cause the Democrats to die. People die. If you take Medicaid off the table, 800 hospitals are going to close, according to one stat. Those hospitals don't just care for black people. Pain like this, public policy pain, has a way of reshifting people's vision. And they start realizing it's not cute anymore. It's not cute to say, I'm over here with this person and they're going to fix everything, especially when they do the exact opposite of what they said they were going to do. Instead of, they create more poverty, more hurt, more pain. In those moments of pain, there's the possibility of bringing folk together. There's a possibility of saying the infrequent voters. You know, there are 30 million infrequent out of the 87 million poor and low-wage voters. There are 30 million that didn't vote. The number one reason they don't vote, data after data says nobody talks to them. But what if we did? That's the moment we're in. What if we did? It doesn't surprise me that a so-called Republican district could be changed, because really the South is not red or blue. It's unorganized. It's divided. And when we bring people together, that's the greatest fear of these extremist oligarchs. I think you can mark it here that you're going to see one of the biggest tidal wave media election that you've seen in years in this country. And the pollsters will not be able to poll it. Because say for in a state like where people can go same-day registration, early voting, give you an example, in 2008 when Obama won, he lost on election day. But he won through the number of people that went early voting. And you couldn't really measure that because they weren't even registered prior to the election. They didn't have a record of voting. I think people are tired. And I think in some ways this might seem strange to folk. Trump, Steve Miller, all of them, they're tired. There's a weariness that goes with meanness. There's a weariness that goes with hatred. At some point, you can't go but so far, and then everybody starts disliking. That's right. That's the ugliness of hate. I mean, eventually, you just look crazy to everybody. And even folk that may have been with you won't stay with you. They'll say, no, that's too far.
So what's the message beyond Trump to the folks who seek to replace him, both as Republicans and as Democrats? What are the lessons they should take from what's happening here on the ground in North Carolina?
Well, I would say to the politician, if you're speaking in front of people, don't take 20 minutes to talk about Trump and 2 minutes to talk about what you're going to do. Flip it over. Speak to those folks that have lost their health care, those 16 million people. Speak to those people that lost their SNAP and lost public education and hospital. Say, if you get elected, tell them what's going to happen in the first 25 days if you have a majority in your party. Lay it out. Don't say first 100 days. Say first 25 days. This is what we're going to do. This is what we're going to do. We're going to fully restore voting rights first 25 days. If you give us a majority, we're not going to wait around. We're not going to pussyfoot around. We're not going to try to bring everybody along. We're going to say to those who are willing to go, let's go, and those who aren't, well, we're just going to vote you out of the way. You can stay there and be mad, stay there and want to be divided, but we're not going to spend all our will compromising and being moderate. We're going to do what's right. We're going to do what's right. That's what people are looking to hear. What is your vision? Why are you running? Not just I'm against Trump. I'm against Johnson. I'm against the Senate. What are you for? That's what people want to hear.
All right, Reverend Barber, appreciate you taking some time to talk. And so for the folks who are watching, what's the call to action for today going into tomorrow?
Today's call to action is go to our website, hit the QR code. If you can participate, participate. If you can donate, donate. Send it everywhere you know. If you know people in North Carolina, Virginia, within 60 miles of this capital, tell them they need to be here, starting over by Shaw University, coming up Fayetteville Street to the Capitol. Tomorrow at 8:30, we start marching at 10. Be here, and then use this as a model for what you do in your own state. I've already gotten calls from another number of states. Would you come and lead one? No, I'll come and help you, because we need everybody doing mass public education through mass mobilization, and then to do massive county-based, micro-focused voter participation, voter election, and get out to vote. Those two things from the bottom up. This is not going to happen from D.C. down. It's going to happen from the bottom up.
Of course. Well, again, everyone who's been streaming, been watching us for the last 3 days as we've walked our way from Wilson here to Raleigh.
You've been here all the while,
We've been here the whole time.
My God.
Rain, shine, cold.
Look at it now, though.
Yeah, we got the sun out.
That's right.
I remember you saying that on the first day of March, you noted when we talked at the end of the day, you said at the beginning of the day it was raining, and then the sun came out by the end.
Came out.
Because I'd asked you.
If you stay long enough.
Well, that's right.
And that's my point. If you stay long enough, people say, well, this doesn't work. No, you didn't stay long enough. That's what we have to learn. The first day that they sat down on the bus didn't change a thing, but they stayed long enough. They stayed. The first day we marched, hardly any media picked it up. But by day 2, what you all doing day 3, now it's running all over the internet and everywhere. You have to stay long enough.
That's right. Well, we'll be back here tomorrow, and so keep watching on Black Star Network.
And that was Black Star Network correspondent Wesley Lowery. Be sure to tune in to the Black Star Network for complete coverage of Saturday's Love for Together, Mass People's Assembly, and Moral March mobilization in Raleigh. That will do it for us tonight on Roland Martin Unfiltered. We hope you have a great weekend, and we'll see you again on Monday. Have a good night.